Welcome back. Chapter 40. Mitchie's excitement grew as she drove home. Her chat with Vic had proven to be quite enlightening when he mentioned that his wife owned a medical transcription service. She'd never known the last name of Cece's friend Norrell, but now she was sure it was Bellamy, as in Bellamy Bell's Bond. From what Cece said, Norrell had married an older fellow who had a few bucks. Cece hadn't mentioned his name, but she put Norrell in her mid to late 30s so Vic would qualify as an older man. And Cece also said that Norrell lived out at the beach. Surely Vic's wife, who couldn't have babies and who ran a medical transcription service, and Cece's friend Norrell were one and the same. And they are. Mitchie found herself envious of Norrell's position. Really? Shocking. She knew enough about men to know that those few hours Vic spent in bed with her meant nothing. The sex satisfied them both, and that was all. Yeah, so Vic had cheated on Norrell, but he didn't have the cocky attitude of a habitual cheater, an attitude Mitchie knew well. On top of that, he certainly sounded sincere about wanting to save his marriage. Norrell was a lucky woman. Her husband truly loved her. Just think, if it hadn't been for that torn condom, Mitchie never would have had the need to seek him out and never would have learned of the connection. But it had, and she did. She might be able to benefit from it, but not without paying a price. The relationship with Errol that she so carefully cultivated like a prize-winning garden was about to go to seed. Even though he hadn't proposed, they'd grown closer than ever since their vacation together, a vacation spent in separate rooms. He felt right at home in his parents' simple abode. In Key West, they'd taken long walks on the beach hand in hand, and she tearfully confessed it that she'd exaggerated her parents' occupations out of fear that his parents wouldn't feel she was good enough. He assured her that he was his own man and couldn't be influenced by his parents. He even acknowledged last week, when kissing her goodnight and grasping her buttocks, that he'd probably have to marry her before she'd give him any, and he only been half kidding. Excuse me. If she had to let Errol go, she'd be alone once more while Cece's friend Norrell got her marriage back on track and a baby to boot. Her baby. Damn it, that wasn't right. She would have to give this some serious thought before agreeing to any terms. It annoyed Mitchie how everything always worked out for Cece and her friends. Hell, even Dana seemed to have gotten over the trauma of her husband's accidental death and Sean's duplicity and was involved in a thriving relationship according to Cece. As for Cece, she and Michael would soon be moving into a nice large house where they and their kids could live comfortably, and Norrell's dream of being a mother would come true. Or at least it would come true if Mitchie went along with Vic's proposition. Well, screw Norrell. She should be the one to come out on top. Mitchie pressed her lips together and ran her tongue over them. Adrenaline raced through her veins, and she realized she still had a way out. If she couldn't have Errol, why not go after Vic? Ooh. Mitchie, don't do it, girl. Okay, so he was a little older for her, but sexually, he could curl her toes, and he could support her. She wouldn't have to work. She could be just like her friend Yolanda. The more she thought about it, the better it sounded. Vic would never have reasons to turn to another woman with her around. His wife might be all down in the dumps, but Mitchie had never been depressed a day in her life. She could dangle the thought of their coming child in front of his eyes like a gold carrot and say that she had fallen in love with him and wanted nothing more than to be with him and their child. Surely his concerns about preserving his marriage to Norrell by adopting his own baby would evaporate once he learned she was available. After all, she was younger than Norrell and prettier. Let Norrell just move on down the hard path of a 60-hour work week, business owner she'd chosen. In the meantime, she, Mitchie, would quit her job and move in. She felt confident that Vic would never look back. Dang, she's delusional. So, that's in a nutshell, the attorney, Mitchie believed his name was Nelson, said in conclusion. He had just presented a proposal to Mitchie on behalf of his client Vic. She'd been surprised when the attorney's secretary called to set up the appointment. That suggested Vic had no interest in seeing her, that all he wanted her to do was give birth and hand over the baby to him and that depressing wife of his. That didn't bode well for her plan. She dressed spectacularly for the event in her best suit, a suit she'd gotten on sale at Dillard's. But to her disappointment, Vic didn't show up. She met with Nelson, who apparently served as Vic's intermediary. Yeah, that word. I know it. Do you have any questions, Miss New? Nelson inquired. Not really. Your explanation was very thorough, and I work at a law office myself, so I've got more knowledge than your average person in these matters. Oh, what do you do? I'm a paralegal, Mr. Nelson. I'd like some time to go over this contract. He followed her lead and spoke in a businesslike fashion, dismissing all attempts at personal conversation. Of course, it's a lot to observe. I do hope you'll keep under consideration that you'll be doing a couple a great service and that your child will be placed in a wonderful home and is all but guaranteed a happy life. God, not another speech about doing a good deed and the rewards it would bring for her child. Mitchie didn't even acknowledge it. Instead, she said, and I'd like to speak with Vic directly. Well, he did authorize me to handle this matter for him, Nelson began, but I'll relay your request to him, and I'm sure he'll be happy to telephone you directly. She stood with him following suit. Thank you, she said. I'll be in touch. Vic called her at home at 7 o'clock that night. Henry tells me you wanted to speak to me. I'm sure if there's something you're not clear about, he could clarify it for you. That wasn't it, Vic. Then what was it? He sounded impatient. Damn, she'd have to be awful convincing. I was hoping you and I would get a chance to talk. What's there to talk about, Mitchie? I came up with an idea that will solve all our problems, and mine too. Any questions can be answered through my attorney. All that's left to do is say either yes or no. I need to see you, Vic. There's something I have to say, and it can't be done over the phone. Can you come over? Where do you live? I was just about to leave for the day, but I don't want to go out of my way. Mitchie understood. With its landmass greater than 800 square miles, Jacksonville ranked #1 among U.S. cities in terms of area. Someone had told Mitchie that the town of Mandarin, San Marco, Arlington, West Connect, and others, which were now mere sections of Jacksonville, had consolidated to form one large city to diminish the effects of the black vote. She didn't know if that was the entire truth, but she did know Jacksonville was one hell of a huge city. I'm in the southeast corridor off of Touching Road, she said. All right, I passed that exit anyway on my way home. Give me the particulars. By the time he rang her bell 30 minutes later, Mitchie was sitting in her prettiest Pignor, fully made up. She opened the door almost shyly. Come in, Vic. The admiring look on his face disappeared quickly, but she knew he'd been impressed by the way she looked. She chased away her smile as she closed the door. Nice place, he remarked, sitting on a white cloth sofa. Thanks. Can I fix you a drink or something? Thank you, but no. I really want to get along home. What can I do for you, Mitchie? She gulped. What the hell was the attraction at home? Norrell and her sorry can't have baby selves. Him and his big hurry were throwing her off, making her nervous. Well, she began, taking a seat near the opposite end of the sofa, her hands resting on her thighs. I felt you should know that I've given a great deal of thought to what's been happening lately. Vic, you and I have created a child together. In a few months, it'll be a living, breathing individual. It happens all the time. Not to me, it doesn't. I lie down at night with my hand on my belly, and the thought of giving up my child, even to his father, has suddenly become reprehensible. You're saying you want to keep the baby and raise him yourself? Vic, what I'm saying is that I have this picture in my head of you and me raising him or her together as a family. Wait a damn minute. You want me to leave my wife and marry you? Mitchie didn't have to pretend to be insulted. Is that really so distasteful to you? The idea of being with me? This isn't easy for me to say, Vic. I've fallen in love with you. In hindsight, I felt something from the very beginning, that day at the landing. I kept hoping you would call me at work. Then when I saw you again at Buckets, I felt my prayers had been answered. I'm not accustomed to being picked up in restaurants, but I felt this incredibly strong attraction to you. I wanted to be with you. I kept hoping you would call me after the night we spent together. For all my bravado the day I came to see you at the office, I secretly hoped you would tell me you wanted me and our baby too. She sniffled. I can't believe this. I open up to you and you practically tell me to get lost. He reached out and took her left hand, which was closest to him. He better not have fallen for that. Finally, some progress, she thought triumphantly. Mitchie, he said gently, what you feel for me isn't love. It's the idea of a happy ending that you keep thinking about. I'm part of your thoughts only because I planted the seed. Yes, I think it's a beautiful thing for a man and a woman to create another life together when they're in love. I had that experience with my first wife, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. But what you and I had was a one-night stand. The only woman I want to raise a child with is my wife. I'm sorry if that hurts you, but it's the truth, and it's not going to change. I see. Mitchie didn't want to admit how embarrassing she found Vic's rejection, so she let anger take over. How dare he reject her like that? Her first instinct was to tell him to just forget about the baby, that he'd never see it. Something she couldn't identify stopped her. Something she couldn't identify stopped her. In that case, there's nothing to talk about. She got to her feet and he followed. Thanks for coming by. She went to the door and opened it, waiting for him to plead with her not to withhold the baby, to stress again what good parents he and that silly wife of his would make. She wanted him to grovel. That would make up for the humiliation she felt just a few minutes before and even the score. Vic reached out and laid a hand on her shoulder. I didn't mean to hurt you, Mitchie, he said gently. If I did, I'm sorry, but I think it's best if we're honest with each other. If you decide not to accept my offer, I understand. Good night, Vic, she said icily. It infuriated her that he didn't beg for her to reconsider. But Vic Bellamy didn't have the best of her. She still had one trump card to play. That's the end of chapter 40. She got one trump card to play. What could that card be? Would it be telling Cece, and then Cece tell Dana, and then Dana tell Norrell? Or is she going to go straight to Norrell and tell her? What y'all think? Do you think that Vic should tell Norrell that he stepped out and got somebody pregnant and then it happened to be CC? Either way, it's a worst case scenario, because if CC tell Norrell, child, because she know that Mitchie is CC's sister. I don't know what's going to happen. So you know what? That's all I got for this chapter. I'm going to see you in the next chapter. Peace.